The call came on a Tuesday morning in October. Miriam's daughter had been worried for months. Not about anything specific she could name, just a feeling. The feeling that her 74-year-old mother, living alone in the house she had shared with her husband for 41 years, was somehow diminishing, fading, becoming less, in the quiet and the solitude, than she had been before. So she called, and Miriam picked up on the second ring, slightly out of breath, and said, "Hold on, I just got back from my walk. Let me sit down." Her daughter waited, and then Miriam said, "I had the most extraordinary morning. I walked the long route for the first time, all the way past the old mill, and I stopped for 20 minutes and just watched the light on the water. Then I came home and made a proper breakfast and read for an hour before anyone needed anything from me. And I thought this is the first time in 40 years that a Tuesday morning has been entirely mine." Her daughter did not know what to say to that, because she had called expecting to hear diminishment, and what she heard instead was something that sounded unmistakably like flourishing. Miriam is not unusual. She is, as it turns out, part of a pattern that researchers have been quietly documenting for years, a pattern that contradicts almost everything our culture assumes about older adults who live alone, a pattern that the people doing the worrying rarely know about, and the people living it are often too modest to claim. Seniors who live alone, when they have adequate resources, social connection, and a sense of purpose, do not merely survive their solitude. In measurable, documented, biological ways, many of them thrive in it. They live longer than expected. They maintain sharper cognition. They report higher levels of daily satisfaction. They age, in ways that show up in blood panels and brain scans, more slowly than the cultural narrative about lonely old people would ever suggest. Today we are going to talk about why. 7 specific, science-backed reasons why living alone after 60, far from being the quiet tragedy most people assume it is, can be one of the most powerful conditions for a long, healthy, fully lived life. If you live alone and have ever felt the need to apologize for it, or explain it, or reassure someone that you are fine, this video is for you. And if you love someone who lives alone and have been quietly worried about them, this video is for you too. Because what the research says may change the way both of you see it. Stay with me through to reason number 6. It is the one that surprised the researchers most. And it is the one that Miriam, without knowing any of the science, had stumbled onto entirely on her own. Before we go any further, everything in this video is grounded in peer-reviewed research and published longevity studies. It is for informational and educational purposes only, and is not a substitute for professional medical advice. Living alone presents genuine challenges for some older adults, and those challenges deserve to be taken seriously. If you or someone you love is struggling with isolation, loneliness, or mental health difficulties, please speak with a healthcare professional. What this video addresses is the experience of seniors who live alone with adequate support and social connection, not those experiencing genuine distress or health-related vulnerability. By the end of this video, you will know all 7 reasons, what is driving them biologically, what the research actually says, and what it means for how you or the person you love approaches life alone. Not as a compromise, not as a circumstance to be managed, but as a genuine context for living well. They have full control over their own daily rhythm, and that control is biological medicine. Let us begin with something that sounds simple and turns out to be profound. When you live alone, you decide when you wake up. You decide when you eat, what you eat, when you go to bed, when you sit quietly, when you move, when you speak to someone, and when you do not. The entire architecture of your day is yours to construct, not negotiated, not compromised, not arranged around someone else's preferences or needs. Most people think of this as a lifestyle preference, a matter of comfort or convenience. What the science shows is that it is something considerably more significant than that. Your body runs on a series of internal biological clocks, the circadian rhythm and its dozens of subsidiary ultradian rhythms that regulate hormone release, immune function, metabolism, digestion, cognitive performance, and sleep quality on precise timing schedules. These clocks are anchored by external cues, light, temperature, meal timing, and crucially, the consistency of daily routine. When your daily routine is consistent, these clocks run accurately. When your routine is disrupted by other people's schedules, by social obligations that override your body's natural timing, by the compromises that shared living requires, these clocks run less accurately, and the biological consequences accumulate over time. A study published in the journal Current Biology found that adults with highly consistent daily routines, same wake time, same meal times, same activity patterns, showed significantly better metabolic health, lower inflammatory markers, and better cognitive performance than those with variable, disrupted routines. The effect was independent of what they were doing. It was a consistency itself that produced a biological benefit. Eleanor is 76 and has lived alone since her husband passed 7 years ago. For the first 2 years, she grieved, genuinely, deeply, and without apology. But somewhere in the third year, something shifted. She began to notice that her body had preferences she had never been allowed to fully honor. She was a natural early riser who had spent 38 years moderating that tendency for a husband who liked to sleep until 8. She was someone who needed complete quiet after lunch to feel right, a need that had rarely been met in a busy family home. Living alone, she began to follow her body's preferences precisely. Up at 5:30, a walk before anyone else was out, breakfast at the same time each morning, the same quiet routine, lunch followed by 40 minutes of reading in silence. Dinner at 6, no later. Within a year of settling into this rhythm, Eleanor told her doctor she felt better than she had in decades. Not just emotionally, physically. Her sleep had deepened. Her digestion had settled. Her energy was more even and reliable across the day than it had been since her 50s. Her doctor looked at her blood panel and said something she has repeated to everyone she knows ever since. He said, "Whatever you are doing, keep doing it. Because whatever it is, your body is responding." What Eleanor was doing was living in alignment with her own biology for the first time in nearly 4 decades. And her biology was saying thank you. If you live alone and have found your rhythm, your particular sequence of morning, afternoon, and evening that leaves you feeling right, understand that you are not being selfish or eccentric or set in your ways. You are doing something that has a measurable biological name. You are practicing circadian consistency. And the research says it is one of the most powerful things a human body can receive. They tend to stay more physically active than people assume. This one surprises people most when they first encounter it. The assumption, persistent and culturally embedded, is that seniors who live alone are sedentary, that without a partner to walk with or family nearby to keep them moving, they drift towards stillness. The research tells a different story, and not a slightly different story, a markedly different one. A study published in the Journal of Aging and Health followed adults over 65, both those living alone and those living with others, and tracked their daily movement patterns using accelerometers over an extended period. The finding was clear and consistent. Older adults living alone took significantly more steps per day than those living with a spouse or family member. They were more likely to leave the house daily, more likely to engage in community activities, more likely to walk to do errands rather than delegate them. The proposed mechanism is straightforward. When you live alone, you cannot outsource physical tasks. You carry your own shopping. You climb your own stairs. You tend your own garden. You walk to your own appointments. The domestic infrastructure of daily life, which, when shared, can be divided and minimized, falls entirely to you. And that invisible daily physical load, unglamorous and uncounted, accumulates into a movement profile that is, in many cases, more active than that of older adults living in households where those tasks are shared or done for them. There is also a psychological component. Seniors living alone are more likely to develop what researchers call an active identity, a self-concept built around capability and independence, because their daily life requires them to perform and maintain that capability. Losing it is not abstract. It has immediate, visible consequences for their ability to continue living the life they have built. That awareness is a powerful motivator in ways that are genuinely biological. Motivation drives cortisol regulation, dopamine signaling, and the neurological reward pathways associated with purposeful physical activity. Robert is 78. He lives alone in the house he built with his own hands 44 years ago, in a village where he has spent his entire adult life. He has no car. He never learned to drive. His wife drove for the 40 years they were married, and when she passed at 70, he was left entirely on foot. His children worried enormously about this. They offered to buy him a car, to arrange taxes, to move him closer to one of them. He declined all of it. What they did not know, what they could not see from the distance of their own busy lives, was that their father was walking approximately 6 to 8 kilometers every day simply by living his life. To the shop, to the post office, to the allotment he kept on the edge of the village, to the pub on Friday evenings for one pint and an hour conversation with men he had known for 50 years. At his last health review, at 78, living alone, without a car, without a gym membership, without a structured exercise program, his cardiovascular fitness was assessed as above average for his age group. His GP asked him about his exercise routine. Robert looked slightly puzzled and said he didn't really have one. He just went where he needed to go. His GP wrote in his notes, "Patient maintains excellent cardiovascular health through habitual daily movement consistent with independent living. No intervention required." That note, in its own quiet way, is one of the strongest arguments for what Robert's life has accidentally built. Movement not as program but as consequence. Fitness not as goal but as byproduct of a life lived under its own power. They develop extraordinarily strong social bonds. Chosen, not default. Here is where the popular narrative about Sine's living alone collapses most completely. Because the narrative says, alone equals lonely. And the research says something far more nuanced, far more interesting, and far more hopeful than that. When you live alone, every social interaction in your life is chosen. You are not simply in proximity to people by default, a spouse in the next room, family at the dinner table, neighbors in the adjoining flat. Every conversation you have because you sought it. Every relationship you maintain through active, intentional effort. And that intentionality, researchers have found, produces a fundamentally different quality of social connection than the default proximity of shared living. A landmark study from the University of California, San Francisco, following over 1,600 adults aged 60 and older for 6 years, found that the Sines who lived alone but maintained 3 to 5 close, actively chosen relationships had health outcomes and mortality rates equivalent to those of Sines living with partners, not slightly worse. Equivalent. The protective effect of close social bonds was not diminished by living alone. It was, if anything, concentrated and intensified by the intentionality with which those bonds were maintained. The biology behind this is now well understood. Deep, chosen social bonds produce oxytocin, a neuropeptide that reduces cortisol, lowers blood pressure, dampens the inflammatory response, and directly supports cardiovascular health. They activate the brain's reward circuitry in ways that produce lasting neurological benefit, not just momentary pleasure. And they maintain the cognitive demand of navigating complex human relationships, reading emotional cues, managing reciprocity, holding another person's inner world in mind, which is one of the most powerful stimulators of continued brain health in older adults. Seniors who live alone and maintain rich social lives do not simply feel better. They are measurably better in their inflammatory markers, in their cortisol regulation, in their cardiovascular health, and in their cognitive performance. Agnes is 80. She lives alone in a flat she has occupied for 12 years, on a street where she knows every resident by name. She has 4 people she would describe as her closest friends, women she has known for between 20 and 50 years, each of whom she speaks to at least once a week. She belongs to a book group that meets on the first Thursday of every month. She volunteers at a local hospital on Wednesday afternoons. She has Sunday lunch with her daughter's family every second week. When Agnes's son, who lives abroad and visits twice a year, worries aloud about his mother living alone, Agnes listens patiently and then says the same thing she always says. She says, "I am alone in my flat. I am not alone in my life." That distinction, simple, precise, and completely accurate, is one of the most important things anyone in this community can carry. Alone in the house is a physical fact. Alone in life is a choice. And it is a choice that most of the seniors who live the longest and live the best have quietly, consistently, deliberately refused to make. They sleep better than almost anyone expects. This is a finding that consistently surprises people in the research literature, and consistently unsurprises the seniors who are actually living it. Study after study measuring sleep quality in older adults has found that those who live alone report better sleep quality, longer uninterrupted sleep periods, and higher rates of waking feeling rested than those who share a bedroom with a partner. The mechanism is not mysterious once you name it. Shared sleep is physiologically disruptive in ways that accumulate over decades. A partner who snores, even mildly, creates noise events during the night that pull the sleeping brain toward lighter stages of sleep without fully waking it. A partner who moves differently, a different body temperature, different weight distribution, Different sleep timing creates continuous low-level micro-disruptions that prevent the sustained deep slow-wave sleep the brain and body depend on for repair, hormone regulation, and toxin clearance. A study published in Sleep Medicine Reviews found that women in particular reported significantly better sleep quality when sleeping alone compared to sharing a bed, even when the relationship was by their own assessment a happy and loving one. The sleep architecture was simply better. More deep sleep, more REM sleep, fewer awakenings, a more complete and restorative sleep cycle from start to finish. And after 60, when deep sleep is already naturally declining and the brain's lymphatic cleaning system needs every hour of deep sleep it can get, the difference between disrupted shared sleep and uninterrupted solo sleep is not trivial. It compounds, night after night, into a measurable difference in the rate of biological aging. Dorothy is 73. She was married for 44 years to a man she loved deeply and genuinely, and who, she will tell you with complete affection and zero apology, snored like a freight train. For 44 years she wore earplugs, slept on the far side of the bed, and woke between 2 and 4 most mornings to the sound of a man who could sleep through anything including his own noise. When her husband passed 3 years ago, Dorothy mourned him fully and completely. And then, approximately 8 months after his death, she had a night's sleep so deep and so complete that she woke at 6:30 feeling as though she had been reassembled from the ground up. She has slept like that, more or less, ever since. She told her doctor about it, slightly embarrassed, as though she were confessing something. Her doctor laughed warmly and said, "You would not believe how many of my patients over 70 tell me the same thing. You are not disloyal. You are finally sleeping. If you live alone and you sleep well, protect that sleep with everything you have. It is not a small thing. It is, according to the most current sleep research, one of the most powerful biological advantages available to an aging body. And you have it. They are more cognitively engaged than the stereotype suggests. The image most people carry of an elderly person living alone is one of diminishing cognitive engagement. Television is primary companion. Days that blur into each other. A mind no longer required to perform at its full capacity because the demands of daily life have narrowed to a manageable, repetitive minimum. The research, again, tells a sharply different story. Adults who live alone must manage the full complexity of their own lives, financial decisions, logistical planning, household maintenance, social scheduling, medical navigation, without the safety net of a partner to share the cognitive load. Every problem that arises is theirs to solve. Every decision is theirs to make. Every piece of information their life requires is theirs to seek out, evaluate, and act on. This is demanding, and that demand, in biological terms, is protective. The brain maintains its architecture through use. The neural pathways associated with planning, problem-solving, decision-making, and independent judgment, all located primarily in the prefrontal cortex, are maintained and strengthened by regular activation. When those pathways are regularly used, the brain builds and maintains what researchers call cognitive reserve, a surplus of neural capacity that delays the onset and slows the progression of age-related cognitive decline. A study published in Neuropsychology found that older adults with high levels of daily cognitive demand, including the management of their own independent households, showed significantly greater cognitive reserve than those whose daily cognitive load was shared or reduced by the support of others. They performed better on memory tests, better on executive function assessments, and showed slower rates of cognitive decline over time. The seniors living alone who maintain their cognitive sharpness longest, the research suggests, are not doing anything heroic or unusual. They are simply continuing to run their own lives. And the running of a life, the 10,000 small decisions and navigations and adjustments that constitute a fully independent existence, turns out to be one of the most powerful forms of cognitive exercise available. Walter is 82. He manages his own finances, cooks every meal from scratch, tends a vegetable garden, reads 2 newspapers each morning, maintains his own medical appointments, and has recently, to the surprise of everyone who knows him, taught himself to use video calling so that he can see his grandchildren in Canada without relying on anyone to set it up for him. When his daughter expresses amazement at this last achievement, Walter looks slightly offended. He says, "I worked out harder problems than this for 40 years. I am not going to stop now just because the tool is new." His doctor tested his cognitive function at his last annual review, a standard assessment for his age, and found his scores in the top 15% for his age group. His doctor asked what he attributed it to. Walter thought about it and said, "I run my own life. I always have. I don't see any reason to stop." His doctor wrote that down too. We are halfway through, and I want to pause here for a moment. Of the 5 reasons we have covered so far, control over daily rhythm, physical activity through independent living, the quality of chosen social bonds, better sleep, and maintain cognitive engagement. Which one resonates most with your own experience or the experience of someone you love? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and I genuinely want to know, because a community that gathers in these comments is full of people living this reality, and their stories matter as much as the research does. Stay with me, because reason number 6 is the one the researchers describe as the most unexpected finding in this area. And reason number 7 is the one I think you will carry with you longest. They develop a relationship with solitude that becomes a genuine health resource. This is the one. The finding that surprised the researchers most, not because it is counterintuitive once explained, but because it required them to make a distinction that medicine had never quite made before. The distinction is between loneliness and solitude. And it is not a small distinction. The research now shows one of the most biologically significant distinctions in the entire field of aging science. Loneliness is a state of painful disconnection, the feeling of wanting human contact and not having it. It is stressful, inflammatory, and genuinely harmful to health. The data on loneliness and mortality is real and serious and should not be minimized. Solitude is something entirely different. Solitude is chosen aloneness, the deliberate use of time alone for restoration, reflection, creativity, and self-regulation. It is not the absence of connection. It is a complement to connection. And in people who have developed a healthy relationship with it, solitude functions as a genuine biological resource, a state in which the nervous system downregulates, cortisol drops, the default mode network of the brain activates in ways associated with creativity and self-integration, and the subjective sense of psychological well-being reliably rises. A study from the University of Buffalo found that the ability to be alone without feeling lonely, what researchers called solitude capacity, was one of the strongest predictors of psychological well-being in older adults. Those with high solitude capacity reported lower anxiety, lower depression, higher life satisfaction, and better self-reported health than those who could not tolerate being alone. And crucially, their inflammatory markers and cortisol levels reflected those self-reports. The biological data confirmed the subjective experience. Seniors who live alone and have developed solitude capacity are not simply managing their aloneness. They are using it. They are using it to rest in ways that go deeper than sleep, to think in ways that go longer than the compressed moments shared living allows, to sit with themselves in the quiet and find, often to their own surprise, that they are genuinely good company. Miriam, the woman from the beginning of this story, who called her daughter back from her walk along the long route past the old mill, is the embodiment of this finding. She did not set out to develop solitude capacity. She set out to survive grief. But in the surviving, she found something she has no clinical name for and does not need one. She found that being alone, after the grief settled, was not a gap where her husband used to be. It was a space that belonged entirely to her. And in that space, she had become more herself, more curious, more present, more alive to the specific texture of a Tuesday morning than she had been in decades. Her blood pressure is lower than it was 10 years ago. Her sleep is deep and consistent. Her inflammatory markers, checked at her last annual review, are those of a woman considerably younger than 74. Her doctor said, with a slightly baffled admiration that good doctors sometimes allow themselves, that she was aging in the wrong direction. Miriam laughed and said, "I know. I think I finally worked out how to live. It just took me until I was alone to figure it out." The capacity to be alone without being lonely is not something you either have or don't have. It is something that develops through practice, through time, through the gradual discovery that your own company in a quiet house on a Tuesday morning is something worth having. And in the seniors who have developed it most fully, the health data looks like what good medicine is supposed to produce. They carry a sense of personal identity that aging cannot diminish. We have arrived at reason number 7. And this one is not about biology first. It is about something that sits beneath the biology, something that, when it is present, the biology reflects. And when it is absent, the biology reflects that too. Seniors who live alone and age well share one characteristic above all others that the research identifies as protective. They know who they are, not who they were in relation to someone else, not who they are in the context of a role, spouse, parent, partner, carer, who they are in themselves, their own preferences, their own pleasures, their own opinions about how a morning should be spent and what a good meal looks like, and which books are worth reading twice. This is not selfishness. This is identity. And identity, in the context of aging, is one of the most powerful forces a human body has. Research published in the Journal of Gerontology found that older adults with a strong, stable sense of personal identity, a clear and consistent sense of who they are independent of their relationships and roles, showed significantly better health outcomes across virtually every measure studied. Lower depression rates, better immune function, slower cognitive decline, lower all-cause mortality. The effect was independent of income, social network size, physical health status, and every other variable the researchers controlled for. The people who knew themselves age better. Full stop. The proposed mechanism is elegant and well supported. A stable sense of identity provides what psychologists call a secure base, a foundation from which the inevitable losses of aging can be absorbed without destabilizing the core self. When you know who you are beyond your roles, losing those roles, to retirement, to bereavement, to the natural reduction of life's external demands, does not hollow you out. It returns you to yourself. And from that self, there's always somewhere to go, something to do, someone to be. Seniors who have lived alone long enough to have rebuilt or rediscovered their identity, separate from whoever they were as spouse, as parent, as colleague, carry a psychological coherence that is, in the most literal sense, protective. Their nervous system is more regulated. Their stress response is more measured. Their immune function is more robust. Their will to remain alive and engaged is not contingent on any external circumstance remaining intact. Frances is 81. She was married for 35 years, raised 3 children, and describes herself as having been, for most of her adult life, primarily defined by those relationships. Not unhappily, she loved her husband, loves her children, and does not regret a day of that life. But she acknowledges that somewhere in the middle of it, she stopped being sure of who she was when no one needed her. Her husband died when she was 69. Her children, grown and busy, needed her less. And for 2 years, Frances describes feeling genuinely lost, not depressed exactly, but unmoored, as though the architecture of herself had been built entirely of other people's needs, and without them, there was no structure left. Then she did something that surprised everyone who knew her. She enrolled in an art history course at her local university, not because she had always wanted to, but because, at 71, she was determined to find out what she had always wanted, and to begin, even this late, to want it clearly and to pursue it without apology. She has been painting for 10 years. She sells her work occasionally at a local gallery that approached her after seeing a piece at a community exhibition. She does not paint to sell. She paints because she has discovered, at 81, that it is who she is. It was always who she was. She simply did not have the space to find it until she was alone. At 81, Frances has no significant health conditions. Her cognitive function is sharp. Her blood pressure is managed and stable. Her mood, assessed formally by a GP as part of a routine well-being check, is in the upper range of the scale. Her GP asked her, at their last appointment, what she thought the reason was. Let us bring all 7 reasons together, because the most important thing to understand about this list is not any single reason in isolation. It is the picture they paint together of what living alone, at its best, can actually be. Control over daily rhythm gives the body the biological consistency it needs to regulate every system it runs. Physical independence maintains a daily movement that keeps the cardiovascular system strong and the musculoskeletal system capable. Chosen social bonds deliver the depth and quality of connection that health requires, without the dilution of obligation or proximity. Better sleep gives the brain and body the uninterrupted restoration they need most as they age. Maintained cognitive engagement preserves a neural architecture that protects against decline. Solitude capacity provides a nervous system with a resource for restoration that is available nowhere else. And a clear, stable sense of personal identity provides the psychological foundation from which all the above is possible. These 7 things do not guarantee a long life. Nothing does. But they are found consistently and measurably in the neighbours who live alone and live well, and their combined effect on the biology of aging is one of the most encouraging findings in the entire field of longevity research. Not because it tells us that living alone is better than living with others. It does not tell us that. What it tells us is that living alone is not worse. That solitude is not the same as loneliness. That independence is not the same as isolation. And that a 74-year-old woman walking the long route past the old mill on a Tuesday morning, stopping to watch the light on the water for 20 minutes because no one needs a home yet, is not someone to be worried about. She is someone to pay attention to, because she has figured out something that the research is only now beginning to articulate. Here is what I want you to do with this video. If you live alone, share it, not to defend yourself, not to prove a point, but because there may be someone in your life who has been worrying about you with the best intentions and the wrong information. Give them the right information. Let the science say what you may not have felt entitled to say for yourself. And if you love someone who lives alone, share it too. Share it as the gift it is meant to be, not as a concession or a consolation, as the truth, that the person you have been quietly worrying about may be doing something that looks, from the outside, like coping, and feels, from the inside, like living. Drop in the comments which of these 7 reasons resonated most with you. Or tell me about someone you know, or who has found in living alone something they did not expect. I read every comment, every single one. And in this particular community, the stories in the comments are sometimes the most important part of the video. Subscribe if you have not already. New videos every week, grounded in real science, told through real stories, made for people who are paying close attention to what it means to age well. Because Miriam is paying attention. Francis is paying attention. Robert is walking 6 kilometers a day without calling it exercise. Eleanor is sleeping 9 hours straight in a quiet house and waking up more herself than she has been in 40 years. They are not surviving their solitude. They are living inside it, fully, quietly, and with a particular kind of confidence that comes from knowing exactly who you are when no one is watching. That is not a small life. That is, in every way that matters, a very large one.